If you hold XRP, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Dogecoin, or any other major market cap crypto, then this video is going to be one of the most valuable you watch moving into the end of the year because you're going to learn everything you need to know in order to not only protect your capital, but to grow it in the case that we are officially in a bear market. And yes, I believe we have more blood on the horizon and many people are going to get wrecked, especially beginners who've never been through a full market cycle before because they don't know the signs to look for. And already many members in our community are feeling FOMO. They're worried about missing out as they've seen the majority of the crypto market retrace. In other words, Bitcoin is back up to $103.5 thousand. Ethereum is up to $3,400 off a low of $3,000, and XRP is back up to $231 off a low of like $2.07. But was this the final dip in a prolonged bull market, or was this the actual signal that we are officially entering a bear market and that this cycle is truly different? Well, I believe the chart tells all before the news does. By the time everyone's crying out bear market, we will already be deep into one. And it's usually closer to the top of a bull market cycle where people call anyone who calls for a bear market total idiots and foolish. But I believe price action and the trend are the strongest indicators of what happens next, and that's exactly what you're going to get on this call. And so in this video, we are not going to be doing a bunch of fluff. I will be in the charts pretty consistently. You're going to want to set aside all distractions and pay close attention because I did this call for our Altcoin Pro University members live and called the next move to new lows before it ended up happening, or we dumped all the way back down to 98,000 on Bitcoin, and before we dumped right back down to $2.07 on XRP. And if you want access to these live calls, you can join altcoinpro.com and join in any one of our calls, including my technical analysis Tuesday call. But without further ado, as always, my friend, if you're feeling blessed and bullish, comment 777. And if you're going to be the wealthiest person in your family tree, smash the subscribe button. Now let's get into the video. The crypto markets are not looking too hot, which is kind of why team and I wanted to cover that for you yesterday in a post that I make, and I rarely make posts in there. But it was something that I was realizing that even over the weekend and on Sunday, we were starting to see some more volume to the downside, and the price was breaking down a bit. And so I was like, okay, well, that's a pretty strong indicator, right? A lot of traders will enter the space on a Sunday if they believe that the stock market is going to start to break down. They can actually get ahead of it by trading crypto. And so crypto seems to be a decent leading indicator. And something that I've shared multiple times over the last week or two, which, now I feel like this theory is proving to be correct, is the fact that not only did Peter Brandt post this broadening top pattern and almost to a T a perfect sell zone, which is interesting because this guy is a classical chartist. You begin to realize that someone that is agnostic, as much as I believe that Bitcoin has a future, that crypto technologies are great, or better yet, blockchain technology, I think at this moment in time, if you haven't already figured it out, it doesn't matter how much good news you get for any one crypto company. Very much, I'll put it this way, very little of the value of these companies and maybe their business model is actually tied to the value of the token or the tokenomics. And a perfect example of that is also Chainlink. Chainlink broke down pretty hard. Considering they actually had a really big partnership with Swift, and they're integrated all over the place. And Ripple has been acquiring now $4 billion of acquisitions, as of late, which is quite a bit when you think about it. Very few companies can afford to acquire $4 billion of other companies by taking on virtually, no credit or loans, which is impressive, which means, yes, they've been a very profitable company, but it's because of the XRP token. And then you get to realize that someone like Peter Brandt, who, again, although he likes Bitcoin and is maybe bullish Bitcoin long term, from an investment perspective, has used a skill set that he's learned as a classical chartist by reading books and studying chart patterns over the last 50, 60 years to say, look, the sell zone on a broadening top, even in Bitcoin, is 114. And he also said, I could be wrong, which means, wait a minute, maybe he's been humbled enough by markets. And I hope today, if you haven't already been humbled, that you were humbled so that way you can approach this next leg of the market with a realistic head on your shoulders, right? Not just constant perma bull. Yesterday, I made that YouTube video talking about everything that we're seeing right now. And then I made another post inside of the group and immediately had 3 to 4 people in the comments. Oh, you're not bullish. This channel's changed up. And it's like, no, you just aren't willing to change with the market. And I don't want to be rude towards that person, but their worldview, or better yet, their view of the market is really small. I don't know about their worldview, but I'm assuming if that's how they approach markets, it's probably how they approach a lot of things, right? They want to believe what they want to believe. Instead of being willing to deviate or to change with the market, to be malleable, if you will. And there are few things in life, in my opinion, that you should be malleable on, right? Like you should be willing to change your approach and opinion on many things. A few of those key things might be your deep convictions and values around faith. Or your family, right? Or yourself and your abilities. But generally speaking, we don't want to, conflate the two with markets. Markets, you need to be very flexible and you need to be willing to be wrong. And I've preached this over and over and over again. So this isn't new for many of you on the call, but if you're new on the call, welcome. But what's interesting is that even looking back to a 1977 chart on soybeans, he predicted the perfect sell zone on something like Bitcoin, which then, took the rest of the market with it. Now, that said, the crypto market is highly correlated, something that I'm currently covering for today's video. But here's the point I'm trying to make. If we look at others versus Bitcoin, okay, with Bitcoin dominance still up, let's look at Bitcoin dominance. Currently sitting at 60% on the dump. So Bitcoin is dumping, so is everything else. The thing is, Bitcoin is dumping less than everything else, which is why since September 15th, and this is a weekly time frame, so if I go to that daily, maybe it'll help you to see it. September 15th, all the way through October, which has been a pretty crappy month and a cruddy month. Now we're having a really cruddy start to November. And on November 3rd, where everything is dumping hard, what occurred? Bitcoin dominance up, which leads me to believe that the majority of capital, or the flight of capital into crypto, is no longer, they don't care about narratives. They don't care even maybe about good tokenomics. What they care about is safety. Okay, is this thing real, and will it be around a decade from now? And then the fact that you have the spot ETF, which is by far the largest of all of the cryptos and will likely continue to be so for probably the next 5 years, 10 years, decade. But the point I'm trying to make is with Bitcoin dominance up with while everything is down, it makes total sense, right? And so just covering these indexes, first and foremost, the crypto total market cap is all of the money in all cryptos that are tracked, okay? There's probably more on meme coins and, weird offshore exchanges that's very illiquid, or, small amounts of liquidity with $1 million market caps. Those don't matter. We're talking about anything that is mostly tracked on like a coin market cap or a coin gecko. We're talking $3.32 trillion off the high of 4.3. Okay, so this is $1 trillion already gone from the market. Does that mean it's actually $1 trillion of liquidity lost? No, far less. We found that out on October 10th. So it doesn't require that much to move crypto markets. Again, something I've taught and trained over this period of time. And so my goal in this call is not to say I was right. It's just when you've done this for a decade now, almost a decade for me, it's one of these things you begin to hopefully be humbled enough to say, oh, maybe, like I need to learn more. That's it. I just need to learn more. What is going on? What I thought this would happen, and instead this happened. But the market truly is pretty illiquid for any market, and this is $1 trillion market. While the total market cap two, do you see this total two right here? Is everything excluding Bitcoin. Okay, so this is all cryptos, all the top 10 minus Bitcoin, all of the other cryptos minus Bitcoin combined, which is about $1.3 trillion of the market, which is actually quite impressive considering, right? That means Bitcoin is $2 trillion of the market. It's literally almost double the size of everything else, which is why dominance is up. So, and it also explains why when things dump, which one's the safest to hold. If you had to hold a crypto, which one would you like to hold? Bitcoin. Hands down. There's no way around it. At least if you're being real with yourself. If you're not lying to yourself, holding on to hopium for any one token. Okay, these are just the facts and the numbers. I'm only showing you numbers here. Now, my personal opinion is yes, Bitcoin is better in most scenarios and situations. Not as a technology, not as a, for transferring money, just as a store of value in the crypto market. Then you have total three, which is the total market cap excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum, which is quite interesting. Okay, so this is that explains itself. And then finally, you have others. And so I made this chart, others versus Bitcoin. Others is all of the cryptos that are not in the top 10 by market cap, which means essentially virtually all altcoins that aren't the biggest, most liquid altcoins. And going all the way back to almost 4 years now on January of 2022, and this is something I showed the team, they are down 76% relative to Bitcoin. That's in a bull market. In the past, altcoins were the play, right? This market now has fundamentally changed. And that is not only because smarter money has entered. Okay, everyone's always thinking smarter money's gonna enter. All of my altcoins are gonna pump like crazy. No, your altcoins pump like crazy because dumb money was playing with it. Now that smart money is playing, they no longer care for all these things that are illiquid and aren't really going to do anything, right? And even if they work hard to do something, how many of these companies are going to succeed, and how much of that value? See, in the past, right, you actually had to register a company with the SEC in order to go public. You actually had to have a working product. You had to go through this long, drawn out process. There was a lot of money and fees and lawyers in place. And then when you go public, this was a great way to raise capital from the public. And so the reward came after the fact that you did some work to put it in place. These days, that has changed, right? Anyone could launch a token and raise a stupid amount of capital. But then what happened is these companies that had all these good ideas and maybe really did have a game plan and a roadmap, which now I laugh at. I literally laugh if anyone's got a roadmap anymore. Like, I don't care. Nobody cares. And then it's like, oh, we have all this roadmap. We have these great things in place. And guess what? They make all of this money from launching the token. And now there's no incentive for them to work hard. And so that's the majority of altcoins. And that model has to fundamentally change. Otherwise, this right here is going to be like 90% in the next year, 2 years, 3 years. Which means 90% down against Bitcoin. Again, which would you rather hold? Would you rather make money on something long term or lose 90% of all the value you put into a market over a course of X amount of years? And guess what? Not only are you older, but broker. So this is the reality of the market right now. And what this simply means is this: we need to pay attention to Bitcoin. Right now, Bitcoin, and well, let's look really quickly at the macro, okay, is highly correlated to the stock market. And even then, we've seen an interesting deviation, right? Looking at the tech stock sector, okay, the QQQ, the NASDAQ. What did we see here? On October 23rd, let's go ahead and pull up a 4-hour chart. Then I will pull up Bitcoin. Let's do the index. Do you see this? Okay. Bitcoin and the NASDAQ are pretty correlated. What this means is when one pumps, the other pumps. When one dumps, the other dumps. Okay. Bitcoin being a smaller market, right, and more volatile, is always going to be less until it gets as big as this, which I don't know if it will. Who knows? Nobody knows the future. Will be on average more volatile than the stock market, one, and two, it's likely because it's always going to be a smaller portion of a major balance sheet or an investment. So for example, let's say a fund manager comes in, has 100K to invest in stuff, okay, and they want to divide it up against all these different assets and they want to, diversify to protect. If Bitcoin is looking more volatile like this, they are simply going to allocate less money to it, because they don't want to carry that risk. That's how they operate. It's very straightforward. Okay. If, for example, Bitcoin looked less like this orange line up and down as much as it was, in other words, when it pumps, look at how it pumped hard. NASDAQ is pumping right here. Bitcoin goes, boom, pumps hard. Then it's up 13% right here on July 14th relative to the NASDAQ. But then look at this. NASDAQ dumps 10% down to 6%. So a 4% dump, pretty nasty. Bitcoin in that same period of time, 13% down to 6. That is a 7% loss. Again, the volatility doesn't play well into their game plan, their portfolios, but correlated. And that's the key. Correlated. Why? Because it's treated very similarly to stocks. Down 16% to 2%, right? 14% loss. Pumps, dumps, pumps. Now, here's what's interesting. Okay. This is what I'm trying to get at right here. Notice how both are up in this period of time. Dumped here, pumped here. Okay. But then we come right into this range where Bitcoin topped on October 6th, right before we saw the massive liquidation event. And so then Bitcoin dumps hard, 19% currently, while the NASDAQ actually rallies. And if I pull Bitcoin off now, NASDAQ is still up 2% essentially. Bitcoin is down 20%. Let's remove Bitcoin now and just go to a logarithmic scale or a normal scale, it doesn't matter, on something this big. What do we see here, right? A really crazy rally from the low right here at 24 all the way up to 26. That is a pretty big move, by the way, for a market of this size. And so this is something that I was warning about as I was looking into it, because I started like doing my own homework into different charts throughout history. What does an exhaustion gap look like? Right? When do we do it more often than not? How long into a cycle do these types of things happen? Did we see it in the past with any stocks? We saw it on Tesla back in like, I can't remember, I think it was probably like 2020, 2021, right? Some of these exhaustion rallies where, you're already topping off. Everything is starting to crumble. All of these other stocks are doing really poorly. Even the crypto market is leading by showing you this thing is ready to dump. Bitcoin is down heavily. And what's happening here? You're seeing massive gaps up on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days. Okay, so an entire week of a strong rally only to see it immediately sell back off. Didn't we just see that in Bitcoin? So this deviation now in the stock market, which is a bigger and, in my opinion, an easier market for me to trade because it's like more liquid. That's it. It's one of these things now, and I wouldn't want to deal with the gaps. The gaps suck because you're not trading pre-market, post-market, all this stuff, right? Here's my point. Bitcoin was actually a leading indicator into what's happening right now in the stock market, but both are correlated. And to further verify and prove that, which means we do want to watch the stock market. Let's come back to Bitcoin. Let's just pull this chart. Let's see. Index is fine. And then let's look at a correlation of even just the S&P over a weekly time frame. Okay. And so right here, let's just do log. Look at this. From the bottom here on March 16th of 2020, up until we started dumping right here. Okay, so the stock market hadn't really dumped up until probably somewhere in this range here. I can't remember exactly when. Technically 2022, really, right? Both were in a bear market at that point, which means they were still correlated as they were dumping. This is just a correlation coefficient. In other words, it's just a correlation indicator against the S&P 500 over 20 periods, in this case 20 weeks. So it's a very long period of time. And what do we see here? Okay, we're close to that 1, which means 100% correlated. In this case, right, the highest correlation we achieved was about 92%. But what I'm more focused on is how long we spent time in the upper range. And so see this right here. To further verify, both were moving almost exactly the same for a long period of time, all the way back from March of 2020 to April of 2021. So do the math, for a year straight. Okay. In other words, liquidity matters. Money flowing into the market by fund managers matters. And they're treated very similar. Now, again, I'm not trying to simply use this to prove a point. What I'm simply saying is we do want to watch the stock market. And after having watched the stock market, knowing, a few patterns in the past might help, but also then looking at an exhaustion gap and what this potentially looks like in an extended move. So Bitcoin leading the market now down, below our range supports, which we've covered in the last couple of weeks, right? Look, wick right here, wick right here. We're on a long-term time frame, by the way. 1, 2, resistance, right? Resistance, breakout, right? And then we have a line, I would say, of resistance right here, once, twice. This is a weekly time frame. If I go to the daily, you'll see we had a day here, break back down, one bear trap, bull trap, sorry, break down hard, back to the lower end of the range. Now we have officially confirmed, okay, that we have a new what? Lower high. So high, low. Possible that we break out for a new high here. Sure. Broadening top is a very sketchy deal, though, in an extended bull market. I mean, again, guys, look, are we in a bull market? It's been in November of 2022, we hit the bottom. It's been a long time. Okay. If you would have bought at any point in time, even into, a breakout right here, okay, you would have been up currently 276%. Like, 370 at the high. That is a lot for any period of time. And this is why Warren Buffett's just better than everyone else. Like, that's the reality. Like, very few people can return that consistently. The majority, I would even hate to say it, I hope not, but a lot of people on this call are going to get their butts handed to them if they hold on to old beliefs into this bear market. But the reality is markets aren't as easy as crypto has made them over the last couple of years. Fundamentally, from 2020 to 2021, we are never going to be the same. Someone says, right, like this time is different. This time actually isn't different. Maybe the cyclical nature of the market, but this time is no different because there's always idiots that hold too long, right? And like they're not willing to look at the signals. And the reality is I don't mean to be rude. I don't want to say idiots. It's just imagine someone knocks on your door and is like, "Hey, by the way, like a flood is coming." Nah, I don't believe that. Hey, dude, by the way, a flood is coming. I don't believe it. And then, a few more times you're like, no, I don't want it because I believe this and that and that. Instead of just saying, I'm going to keep an open mind, I will look at everything and then make an educated decision. And the problem is some people look only for things that confirm their bias because they're already in a market. That is, in my opinion, the greatest form of ignorance. And again, I would disagree on a few things, right? If it comes to your faith and religious views and yada yada, but like generally speaking, right? Markets, who cares? This is literally just, when you really think about it, a digital asset that lives on a blockchain using information and energy. And why the hell should a literal candlestick matter to you so much that you're willing to hold on to a belief so firmly, right? So for me, it's a no-brainer. Look at this. What do we have now? We officially have our highest high. We had our low, a new lower high, going back to this daily time frame. What do we have now? A lower low. And the reason I pointed to this is because not only are we seeing the NASDAQ break down off of what I believe now is an exhaustion gap that is relatively confirmed, we have a high correlation with the stock market and Bitcoin. So looking at Bitcoin and where it's at, would it be wise and how well it's traded and performed against all other cryptos? 60% of the market. Would you believe, and this is my point, that it's a good idea to hold the rest of your crypto bag? And I'm not trying to tell you what to do here, but I've been out. Why? Because the reality is XRP, Ethereum getting trashed. Bitcoin was bouncing here at the range lows, right? Bitcoin put in its all-time high on October 6th. Where the heck is that? Here. XRP was putting in a lower low, relatively weak. Broke down way harder, less liquid. Failed to break back into its range. A lot of overhead resistance. Breakdown for what? A new low? Right? And I really on major liquidity like events, right? Major in this case, this massive liquidation event, I typically don't look at the lowest wick of something like this, but it does provide us a view into how much leverage there was and how illiquid it is, which means now it's going to affect the confidence of anyone else who wants to enter it again, especially big players. If you're a big player and you actually know markets, you don't touch this now after this right here, which means who's going to come and support it? If the majority of it is already owned by a major company, who needs to sell it in order to have more capital, working capital for all of their other business ventures. Ripple. Okay. And now we've confirmed, right? And it's not even a question. It's like CTO David Schwartz multiple times. Ripple will act in its best interests of who? The shareholders, which are major investors through seed round, Series A, Series B, Series C. Okay. And they can even sell. I'm not saying they will, and nor would it be wise. I'm willing to bet they're not going to do all of it or any of that. But it is very much possible because it's an asset on their balance sheet. They can sell the actual keys to those $40 billion, 40 billion tokens that are released every single month. And the supply has increased a bit. It's up to 60 billion now circulating. I'm willing to bet that it's probably going to continue to increase a little bit here and there. This breakdown now leads me to believe that this is something that I'm looking to short, right? Like I'm going to short weaker plays. I'm going to short the weakest cryptos. And this is not even a weak crypto relative to a lot of cryptos. It's just something that I need to make money on both sides here, as does anyone on this call. And shorting is not an easy game. I'm going to be waiting for a retrace and yada yada. We'll talk maybe more about that next week. So that said, shorting is going to be a more profitable play into this next move. Uh, Ethereum, same thing. What did we see? Failed to break out above 47, failed to be supported at 38, where we had our prior range low here between the highs. Okay, even with the massive liquidation event October 10th, breaking for a new low. This isn't something that I want to play with until at least 2,700 to like 22. Okay, on an XRP with the current range we're at and just how much sell pressure they're gonna likely have. Realistically, I probably don't want to mess with this thing until 190 to $2 if I'm buying dips and that's all I know how to do. Right? I will be shorting into those ranges at some point in time on maybe a potential retrace, but those are ranges where we do have a decent amount of support. The problem is if we break down from $2 to 190, this thing has a long way to go before our next support at 72 cents. Realistically, 72 to like 86. So, and that's something that you have to prepare for because who actually thought, right? We'd currently be sitting at 217 when for a while there we're building a nice support at $3, which means what? All things are possible in this market, especially in a weak market where the stock market is likely going to continue to dump. Is it possible that now we are in a bear market? Now, this is my only thing, okay? And this is the last thing I want to cover here, and then we can get into some questions. And let's actually look at the volume here. Let's get rid of that correlation tool. Do you see this? And let's even get off of Kraken because they don't have as much volume. So let's look at a bigger one. Coinbase is good. What do we see here on the volume? Right? Off of the high. Look, insane liquidation event. Cool. Right? A decline in volume, no new highs, and then growth in volume to the downside. See this? With a really big guy, almost in this case, right? The third standard deviation up here for $1.8 billion. We were at about 1.74, all the way to a new local low. This is textbook start to a downtrend. And when you've already peaked off with a bull trap, that's where I get a little nervous because we are officially below what should have been a major support going all the way back to December, which means this was a very weak bull market. And I think it is possible we've entered the bear market. We've deviated away from a typical October, November into a bull market cycle. We have far more institutional players. They can make money on the downside. And they're also looking at Bitcoin. Why wouldn't I want this thing to dump to $70,000, $60,000 where I can accumulate a stupid amount, knowing that I think it's going to go to 250 to 500 to $1 million in the future, right? Like as an investment, it makes sense. They play longer than you and I. They're not worried about what their portfolio on something like this over 5 years looks like because of today's price move. And also, no one institution can move any one market for so long. So, they're at the mercy of the trend in the same way that you and I are at the mercy of the waves of the ocean. If we're swimming in it, right, we are at the mercy of the ocean, not the other way around. No one's big enough. So the way I look at it is, I think officially the top is in for the year. That is my it's like I feel like a doctor right now walking in. So I don't know how to break it to you guys. We don't have some great news. Um you know, top is in, and now what do we do about it? And so I personally, that's my opinion. We have one last saving grace. This is my only thing that I think could potentially happen. Bull market is still on. It's going to be extremely difficult for us to hit, new all-time highs end of November at this point with this type of price action and an expansion of volume on the daily time frame to the downside. Is this nice little 40-week moving average. Okay, it's a simple moving average, not an EMA, an SMA. It's the old school version. An EMA it was adopted a little bit later. It kind of weighs price action closer to the end of the range. So right here, let me move Bitcoin down, visual order, send backward. There we are, because I'm OCD. Now, really quickly, if you're enjoying this video and learning loads, then the next best step for you would be to join Altcoin Pro University by going to altcoinpro.com. You can find the link in the bio or the description below, where we have so many members that have consistently been winning with this platform, and our retention is arguably the highest in all of school and their communities. In other words, we're actually helping people make more money than they spend to be here. And not only is everything a free ride thereafter, but now they can actually double down and make some serious cheddar inside of crypto. Now, we can't guarantee you any one result, but instead I will just show you some of the results that our own university members have been getting. One of our members, Eric, was able to turn $85,000 into $305K before 2024 altcoin season started at the end of last year. We had another person named Pascal turn $100 into $748 in a single trade. Some of our members are earning about a 678% APY on one single yield that they participate in for under a week. Another member, Jose, was able to recover his entire $97 month subscription in the very first month just by putting his current crypto to work for him in a yield pool. And so that's what's so cool, is we actually offer everything from live classes and courses, access to our pros and DeFi experts, altcoin picks, which we update and share every single month on a spreadsheet to show you the actual performance that you would get, technical analysis calls that I host every single Tuesday, these DeFi yields and airdrop alerts, among more. And just to give you an example of how cool these opportunities are, although they might feel complex or scary, we have a pro to help you step by step. For example, the difficulty level on this one is very easy, and you'd be putting to work literally a US dollar. In other words, if you're sitting on USD tokens, USDC, USDT, then why not put it to work in a yield farm that earns you about 28% APY for at least the next 1 to 4 months? And here is a video that goes over all of it, only available to Altcoin Pro University members. For many of you, if you're sitting literally on 100K in crypto and you're able to get between 15 to 20+% by allocating it weekly on 15 minutes of your time, then you're actually hurting yourself, because at the end of the day, this is so minimal effort in order to get a big result and put your crypto to work for you, even in the case that you're not sitting on crypto, but you're sitting on tokens that are USD backed. So go ahead and check out Altcoin Pro down in the description or the bio below. Look forward to seeing you on the other side. Worst case scenario, you don't like it, there's a 14-day money back guarantee, no questions asked. This SMA right here, 40 weeks. Okay, so it doesn't matter if I go to the daily time frame, it doesn't matter if I go to the 3-day, the weekly, it's always going to be on that week. Notice that at the start of the bull market, it handled it very well. Even into March through September, what do we have here, right? 1 week, major breakdown. Interesting, wick, support, 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, maybe ready to go, 4, 5, right here, breakdown, bear trap, rally right back into it. So it is possible we see something like this or this yet again. My concern, and I really mean this, is that this happened way earlier in the bull market. So this was a safer play no matter what, even with this type of a situation. Then we touched it yet again in April. But this late stage in the market, where we're struggling to rally for highs going all the way back to May of this year and now breaking down. Even if this was a bear trap, I personally think, let's say this thing breaks down here, wick, rallies right back up to here, 112. If I see any selling whatsoever there, right back to this, I'm out immediately and actually shorten the crap out of it at that line. Because this is late stage now. This was early stage or middle of the stage, right? Early stage, mid stage, mid to late stage, late stage. Anything after this, it's going to be harder and harder for this thing to rally for new all-time highs. And that's just, the cyclical nature of markets, I would say. As markets get bigger, they're harder to move. As confidence wanes, as the stock market is struggling, as we have all of this macro stuff happening, the government shutdown, I think, is also a big one, guys. Like, I mean, we're probably going to hit a record. Some people are predicting even into December for the longest period of shutdown in history. So, because of these things and factors, it's better to just stay away if you're not like shorting markets, right? And get some cash in hand. And by the way, selling here is not a bad, like, what's the worst that could happen? This isn't the bottom, right? Let's say you sell here, you're only down 20% on a Bitcoin. And let's say, is it possible that this thing could dump to 60 for an all-time high? And by the way, I think this is possible, a 50% dump this bear market cycle to 60K. I'm buying like crazy anything there. Anything under 50% on a Bitcoin, I'm buying like crazy. And what's nice about that is the fact that Bitcoin reserves are continually declining no matter what. So from an investment standpoint, things look good. And I believe there's going to be major support in ways we've not seen before in a bear market. But from a current market environment standpoint, that doesn't mean things can't dump. And maybe there aren't enough new buyers, right? And by the way, all it takes is a few really bad days for more people like me and you, which when you combine millions of people, right, to say, I'm out. I capitulate. Puke, 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 right? At some point in time, institutions can continue to buy those pukes and actually add fuel to the fire so it dumps harder so they can buy lower. That's what's going to probably happen. You're probably going to see this thing climb a little, but mostly continue going down, even as we trended the downside. So if I'm an institutional player, me personally, with enough money, I'm trying to get this thing to go lower at this point while I accumulate. Um, So let's do this. Let's dive into a few questions now. It's 4:40. We are all loaning XRP. Sorry, we are loaning XRP all the money for acquisitions. You mean, James, I'm assuming you mean Ripple. You're not loaning XRP, you're buying an asset where they are the largest holder. And so if any whale came and sold any one crypto, not just XRP, but they own the majority, there needs to be enough people on the other side to buy it for it not to dump hard. The problem is, at this stage, I don't think there is. And so, yes, and essentially, you're saying it in one way. I wouldn't say you're loaning it to them. You decided to buy a token where the largest holder needs to sell it. And by the way, they don't need to. It's just that if the price keeps going down, here's how it hurts their business. It is the largest asset on their balance sheet, right? And so they still trade it and track it against what? The US dollar. What do we trade against, right? USDT, USD. So my personal opinion is this: if they watch the majority of their own largest asset on their balance sheet go to $1, that's going to hurt the rate at which they can, take loans against it or do some, creative things with it. They should have sold all of it. The problem is they know they can't because there's not enough buyers on the other side for the size of that market. And so the way that I would look at an XRP right now is this: they can't get out with all of it, so they might as well sell closer to tops, which is going to create more overhead pressure, and it's just going to be harder for the price to climb up. Um, on the flip side, they made extremely smart decisions. I would bet on Ripple as a company all day, not XRP. Um, Ripple has made really smart decisions by acquiring all sorts of really profitable companies who are very well embedded in the financial system. So to me, like if you're an accredited investor, by the way, right? Maybe not right now is the right time at the stage of the market we're in. Again, I don't bet into all these stocks and cryptos in an environment where maybe I think the whole market could go down because the tide is against you. I usually wait for the start of a bull market, but I think if you're an accredited investor and you are able to invest in a Ripple, I'm currently not, then go for it. Like that's a really good company to own, which is completely separate from the XRP token. So, if they make cool plays with their those other businesses they've acquired, we might see it in the next bull market where maybe more money is flowing on chain with the XRPL, and that will help the XRP token. I do believe that. But as things stand, it's going to be very difficult. Okay, I just need to just not buy anything and hold cash. I don't disagree, right? I think that the next smartest decision anyone could ever make is using cash. I used to write advertising and copy for a couple of different businesses, and one of them, a guy by the name of Sam Bakhtiar, in 2008 lost everything. He was a, um, why am I forgetting? Iranian immigrant from Tehran, and he was like he went on to become a global globally known like bodybuilder and then lost everything in 2008. He went and took his last, I think, like $10,000 to $14,000 he had, and invested in a woman who had an idea for something that looks similar to like Orange Theory fitness gyms, group fitness type stuff. He's like, what's the worst that could happen? Dumped it all in on that, all in at the height of essentially one of the nastiest crashes in history. Okay. Went and turned that into a $100 million gym franchise. And that's the point. By the way, he passed away of COVID. All sorts of health issues occur when you're doing enough, juice over that many years. Missed the guy. He was a great dude. And I guess the moral of the story is this: cash is only king in a situation where you plan to deploy it. Otherwise, you're still losing money. You're still losing value. And in the case of me sitting on cash for how many years in a bear market, personally, I'd rather be productive with it, right? And find a creative way or something that I can invest into that maybe is a business. I think buying businesses or creating your own business, if you're entrepreneurially spirited or have someone that is and that you can work alongside with your own unique skill set, will make you far more money than any market ever could. So cash is only king to a degree. That's my personal opinion on it, but I've seen it enough. Uh, let's see here. I don't know, James. What do you mean by Noah? I just got. Oh, he's talking Noah with when I was talking about a flood. I just got into it at the top. Okay. Tough. It's sometimes you got to cut your losses and cut them quick. So if you're still currently in, learn to cut a loss, brother. It's a lot better. And worst case scenario, it goes against you and it pumps a bit and you're pissed off at yourself. You're like, I should have held. Don't do that. Don't ever have that mentality because usually by the time you're buying back in, it dumps even harder. And so the reality is what I do, okay? And I found this to work really well for me, and everyone experiences the emotions of the market. Notice what we have here, right? Bitcoin pumped to 116. First and foremost, high, okay, low. Where's the next high after the range low? Here, okay, pretty straightforward. So notice that at one point in time, someone sold right here. Maybe, who knows? Someone did eventually. So I'm talking about any random person in the market. Then the market rallied from 109 up to 115. They felt dumb. They bought right back in, only to watch it go further. They sell here. Watch this happen. They're in and out, losing money on every single move. When in reality, selling here and just staying out would have been not a bad idea. In similar fashion, okay, here, out, or if it, maybe you waited a few, bars on an hourly time frame. Okay, notice how we're picking up in volume to the downside. See this growth in volume, even with the big green? That means to me, this is like we're going to continue to see an acceleration in growth to the downside. But again, lesson for a different time. Selling here, even if it rallies back up to 110, is not a bad move. Just wait. Watch it happen. Then it comes back into here, sell more. Or sell here at a range resistance. So, but staying away and not worrying about like cutting your losses and not worrying about a retrace and in and out is one of the best things you can do. And also, you're not paying all those fees. Fees add up, right? Especially if you're trading with $10,000 clips, $50,000 clips. I don't know how much you guys are trading with, but it starts to add up a lot. And you're sitting there losing money on everything. And that's no fun. It's disheartening when in reality you can make one transaction and just cut it out. I'll wait for a better opportunity to enter. Uh, XRP question: should I go get out? Next support. Today wasn't a bad day. Yesterday really wasn't. As I was covering it, but yeah, look, interesting, right? Let's do 4 hour. What do we see here? Okay, breakdown. So highs are here. So this is really our range. Oops, wrong tool. Okay, 1, 2. Where's our range support in this? Here, right? 1, 2. And you have a few little mid lines and yada yada. I don't care. Broke down to 224. Try to rally. Look at the growth in sell volume, by the way. Again, strong indicator that even with a big dip buy, okay, someone bought this dip, some big player came in, boom, bought it. And it could have been in the order books for a long time, on Bitstamp, on any exchange. I don't know. Like there's too many moving pieces to worry about that. We're focused on the volume here. If it looks similar on most exchanges, good to go. Okay, like look right here. Look at this. Interesting, right? Binance. It likely happened because of Binance. See how big that dip buying is? But what do you see here? If you're a student of mine, what are you seeing here first and foremost? A break below what? A range support. This was the low of the range before we rallied back up to break back down. This right here is our range support. And you know, it's interesting. I could zoom right back out and you can see, look, it acted as a range resistance for quite some time before the breakout and move. And, you know, zoom out even further to a daily, it's even easier to see. So the point I'm trying to make is we are officially below it now. Even with that big dip buy, we failed to come back into the range or above the range support, which is now going to be what? A resistance. Not only is it going to be a resistance, even with this long wick and a lot of volume, we're seeing a growth in volume, but where's the price headed? Down. Growth in volume to the downside is likely going to lead to more growth volume, and the price is going to continue in that direction. I don't fight the ocean here, okay? There's a current that is in the direction of down, and I don't want to fight it. And we have an inside bar. This is not a bullish engulfing. This is an inside bar, even with the wick. So sure, we might hang out here for a while. We might do this. I'm willing to bet sometimes you see this and it sucks. Sometimes you get a nice short here, but sometimes you'll see do this. Oh, see, we're fine. But honestly, when you start to see it break right back here, out. Out or like shorten the crap out of it into that breakdown. That's usually what I do in environments like this now, because this right here is not healthy. It's not good. And it's been weaker relative to Bitcoin, which leads me to believe it's going to break down even harder than Bitcoin. If Bitcoin hits 60K, this thing's probably like under $1. Um, I mean, that's not even a question, right? A 50% dump. We saw it in a single day. Someone's like, that can't happen. That won't happen. Well, we saw it in a day. It can happen. Anything in markets can happen, especially in a bearish environment. This was actually happening while things were still looking kind of good, right? 4 days after Bitcoin hit an all-time high, things are looking good. And this happened? Is it possible that we go to 70 cents? Yes. Right? And the way I look at it now is literally almost every crypto. And I would bet against it. Like I would bet against it, but I look at it and say every crypto could go to zero. And if I hold that perspective, I play smarter. I only pick the best. So, I don't know if it's like a wake up call for some of y'all or like you don't like me after it or what, but I've learned all these lessons the hard way, ladies and gentlemen. I really have. I've been through enough cycles. Like um and it's not like trying to be I really just want to watch what happens. You know, I could be wrong and this thing starts to rally back up. Guess what I'll do? I'll immediately flip bullish. In other words, if Bitcoin, I'm okay to be wrong, guys. You have to be. If Bitcoin, for whatever reason, can hold this support on that 40-week moving average, which is really just a 200-day moving average, and then we see something here, I would still be more cautious here than I would have been back here. But this is something that, like, because it is late stage, and notice how we're flattening. This is the last thing I will say. Look at this. See how we've been like trending to the upside consistently? Look at how we're starting to flatten out here. Whenever I see it flatten out and the price break back below, that's where it starts to get scary. Like this should be a strong trend. It's the whole reason an EMA is valuable is because it shows you the trend without all the noise. So if I hide the price, see this? Trend. Where would you guess the trend is? Up, right? But if it starts doing this over the next couple of weeks, flattening out like this, that means the trend is officially kind of over. Um, to give you an example, it happened even more rapidly here. Up, and then what do you see here? Trend is down, new lower high. Okay. And then the price really broke down. So, and this is like, and Bitcoin is, it's likely it's already holding a better, nice curve. A lot of older markets or bigger markets will kind of flatten out before they start to turn down. Whereas this was a really rapid decline because it's just such a volatile market at the time and a smaller market. It's different this time for sure, just from an institutional standpoint. But that doesn't mean the fundamentals of technical analysis or markets are. So let's do this. Let me continue on with a few more questions. I never wait for a bounce anymore. Because tomorrow could be even worse. I've learned the hard way that even if it bounces, I don't care to be in for an extra 4, 5, 10%. I'd rather save myself a potential 20% loss. So I'm like so strict on that. I literally, Rob just asked, should we be waiting for a small bounce to exit or just cut losses? I cut my losses quick. I literally never wait for a bounce anymore. So, and that's really, it's really wise. Because there's sometimes you'll see a week of straight carnage, and you're sitting there like, I was waiting for a bounce, and now you're down 30% when you could have been down 10, 15. You know what I mean? Like it's not wise. I honestly believe that crypto has just become tradable assets where market makers make money up and down. They don't need those assets at the all-time high. Better to accumulate and to move on up or down at lower prices. By the way, what's your thoughts about Link, Su, Sol, Sui, Tau? I think just look at the chart, man. If it looks strong relative to most other assets, maybe it's a good thing to buy into the bottom. Right now, I don't care what asset it is. I love Sui. I think it's a great product. I think Tau is interesting. I think Chainlink's it's always going to continue to grow in its adoption with the space as an oracle. Solana's easily one of the most used blockchains in the world, hands down. It's no different than the fundamental thought process of people who don't know the space, like, just your basic person who's like, oh, look, Bitcoin blockchain is slow and it costs more. It's terrible. That's their whole thought process, right? Versus Ethereum, which Ethereum is better for a lot of applications, right? Okay, cool. Ethereum's great for a lot of different applications. Sol is the same thing to Ethereum then. Solana is just better in a lot of different ways, but it has way less money in it because they don't need to do the exact same thing in order to be the biggest in their own environment. Um, or for different applications and use cases. So I think, Sol is like easily the best blockchain in my opinion for a lot of different DeFi activities. If I'm not just sitting there staking and holding an asset for interest. Um, that said, all of these are going to struggle and get trashed if this is the start to a bear market. And we have about 1 to 2 weeks to find out really is the bear market here. It is possible we rally right back above late stage. We could go up higher, but my personal gut is telling me this was actually the top. That like I'm like probably 70% on that. And we'll find out. I'll be 90% or 100% by a week or two from now. And so that's just kind of my head on things right now, which means I wouldn't touch any of them. I don't care what they are. We can look at I'll look at a Solana just because. Yeah, see how it's flattened out here and now you have a lower high? This is not good. It's struggling to stay above 190, which is where I told people that's where I'd be buying. Top was in for Solana, I think. And it's going to likely break right back down to 125. And it has a lot of room to dump in a bear market. So even though it's a great product. So I just watch them. Relatively speaking, I don't know how Solana's doing. to a lot of other assets, but we can just look from like a daily time frame. It's probably not doing too hot. Okay. Let's look at like that high going back to January. Let's do Ethereum and Bitcoin. Okay. So from that high in January, where Solana put its all-time high in, Ethereum is both Ethereum and Bitcoin are basically break even, whereas Solana is down 41% from that high. So then we can go into these highs, right? And like they're all trading almost exactly the same. So Solana, when it pumps a little harder. Interesting. We've covered this over and over and over again, right? If it's a smaller asset and it's a decent asset, a decent crypto, it's likely going to perform stronger in an uptrend if it's a big one. And we're talking top, I'm talking top 10 here, like top 20 maybe. Everything else is going to be trash. And not because it's an actual bad product or they're not builders. You have to understand in a bear market, even if it's like the coolest crypto on earth and it has a really good utility and they have really good builders, how do they raise their capital? Probably launching the token. And then maybe some venture capital and seed investors and blah blah blah. And then what happens is in a bear market, nobody's excited to use anything. Everyone loses confidence. The team runs out of money. I've seen this over and over with some of the biggest, bro. Like look at Avalanche, $700 million raised. Anyone could live so many lifetimes on that. And I don't know if I think it's all gone. Like they've been trying to figure out creative way. How's that possible? Well, they just got too much money too fast and great ideas, but bear markets wreck everything. So a bear market can take your favorite crypto that is actually cool, that is doing cool things from a utility standpoint, business standpoint, and change everything. But Solana performs slightly better in the case of a pump, and it looks like it's down pretty equally to both Bitcoin and Ethereum. And notice right here, Ethereum and Solana are down 28 and 24% respectively. Bitcoin is down 15. Okay, it's just the size of these markets. It's liquidity and the size. So let's hop off of that. Let me turn these guys off. Also delete that. Okay. And I'm just gonna look at Solana on that. Oh, Orange, I'm sorry to hear that, man. Hey, good for you though. Like good that you're even on these calls. I'm not kidding. And like, so he's saying late to the party, took a big old loss. And I think about it it's like, dude, there's times I've taken 100% losses. So if you're coming out with, some scratches, but you're not totally dead, like good to go. Like you can always learn the skill and make more money over the long term. And it takes a cycle or two. Like for me, I finally am at a point now where I'm like, okay, I've learned the skill set that I think I can make money in almost any major market. But I had to lose a lot to get there. And I'm not saying you have to, right? But it's usually the case with especially young people like me at the time where it's like I just take bigger risks than most people. And then it's like, and I'm not even as risky as some of the people I like hang around. So, and they'll make way more money in a bull market, but then I kid you not, they always blow up. It's like the same thing over and over and over again. Are any of your trading indicators signaling on TradingView saying short and sell? I don't even need an indicator to say short and sell. I'm looking at the literal chart and it's telling me not a bad time to start shorting. But we'll talk more about that at some other time, Cliff. You recommend getting out of positions, jumping into stable coin. You heard the call. Make your own decision. Uh, do you think the bottom is in? No, not even close. Not even close. I think the bottom can be way deeper. Do I think the bull market is over? No. Not I'm 70% there. But I'd have to be 100% there to say yes, it's over. How do you know? Usually in hindsight. So, I would like to see the market hold above that 40-week moving average. Simple moving average. Then if it does this week and then the next week or like it breaks down and the week after it breaks back into the range, I will likely take a little position, but I'm going to be more cautious than I would have been 6 months ago because we're later stage in the market now and things are not looking too hot from a macro standpoint. So that's my point. Like, do I think the bottom is in for maybe this little move? Maybe. I don't, but I'm not thinking about that. And probably for the majority of you, you're not going to be able to trade it well. So I don't want to tell you it is in and then you go all in and then you get cooked, right? You get absolutely screwed and you lose even more money. I really want to prepare you for that potential. or that potentiality. So for me, it's like, do I think the bottom is in? Looking at this trend, it doesn't look good. If anything, I think we're going lower. And I would bet on that far more than I would bet to the upside. And so that's kind of where you have to live. It's like you never live knowing exactly what's going to happen. But if you get decent enough at looking at charts and then, you're doing, making well risk managed plays, your probabilities of making money over a longer period of time, they're still low because that's markets. It's just they're greater than they ever would have been. And those are the people that make money. And there's few of them. There's few of them that make money in markets. Time to transition over to the stock market. I don't disagree. And then your first mistake is trading options solely. Stay away from options if you want to trade the stock market. Learn how to actually buy a stock for a move. Options, I know absolute animals in them, like people that are so good at in the stock market and they make millions of dollars a year, or every now and then they don't make as much this year, but then they make a ton the next year. They stay away from options. So few people I know, like, who makes money with options? The company that offers the options. If you want to make money with options, like start a brokerage where you're the one selling access to options. you know, like um there's so many ways to lose money in options because it's just massive leverage. Now, there is also limited downside risk. Okay, like you're gonna lose all of your bag if you're trading $500 on a play and you can make a ton of money. You're gonna lose your $500, but if that's all you got, so if you can't make money, again, no different than leverage, just with perpetual futures. If you can't make money with that, you're probably not gonna make money with options. Uh, if not a bear market in say the next 2 weeks, what's your thoughts on a continuance of the bull market? I think we'd have a very short period of time. I think potentially all the way into April. Uh, if in the next 2 weeks, I think this 2 weeks is extremely crucial. And if we do not see within 2 weeks, any sort of support or a retrace to the upside, then I think we're in a bear market. And again, I'm about 70% there now. So that's my thoughts. In terms of length, very short-lived. I think you don't see this in a strong, healthy market, right? Typically, you'll see market continue to the upside. We should be at least in a new high, 130. Like this right here is so weak and terrible for a November and start to November that it leads me to believe we're in a bear market already. Um, Everyone, by the way, no one says this. Like you're gonna hear a lot you're gonna get a lot of information and news. This isn't it. We still got more time. Trust me, everyone's going to be talking about the bear market by the time you've bottomed out in the bear market when you should be buying. And it's the start to a bull market. Orange is like, I thought it was going to 10. He's talking to XRP. I thought it could have at least hit 5, but I don't care. And I don't need it to hit 5 to make money in markets. What impact do you think the spot ETFs of XRP? I think if they launch the XRP ETF right now and you see a very small little rally in the price, but no real move to above 270, I'm willing to bet if it launched and XRP pumped back up to 240 or even up to 270, but failed to break above 270, that is like the easiest short of my life. I will short the crap out of it. I don't think the spot ETF in this market environment is going to do anything for it now. Even if it gets a little bit of a news rally. XRP needs to get back above 270. It's not even like this thing is it's going to be hurt otherwise. So unless if the spot ETF somehow pushed it above 270, I just doubt it. If Bitcoin's dumping, XRP is going to continue to dump. So maybe, for example, you'll have a negative correlation. Like let's say that day Bitcoin is down slightly. They launched the XRP spot ETF. They should have got that thing done sooner. It should have happened while it was in a healthy range. And then timing matters in business and in life, right? Timing matters. And then let's say like they launch the spot ETF and then XRP pumps a little. Great. Negative correlation. Like for me, that's actually a rally that I would sell into if Bitcoin's looking poor. USDC, bro. It's the coolest crypto out there, man. Coolest crypto ever. Great utility. Um, Good for you, Orange man. This is your first time around crypto. I mean, I know you've heard about it a lot. Honestly, bro, like I wish I had a community like this when I started. Right? The space was so new. Like nobody knew anything. And I made mistakes on everything, bro. I've lost money in I made money in everything, but I've also lost in everything. Probably more than I made at some point in time. And it's like now I make money actually like playing these swings, but you kind of find your niche. You know, I remember at one point I bought like a uh back in the NFT craze of 2021. I bought like what was it? It was an OK Bear for like $6,000, like the day after they launched an NFT. It pumped to $20,000 within that week or two. And so I have a literal digital image that is worth $20,000. And I'm like, oh, this is great. I'll just hold it to 30. You always have, everyone always has this stuff. And I'm like, it's different because there's a community and it's less liquid. So it's harder for it to dump. Not true. It was harder to sell when everything is dumping than a crypto asset. And so in many ways, it's like I personally never touch an NFT again. I mean, I like to buy them for fun. But it's no different to me now is buying like a cool little photo that I'd buy for my home. If I wouldn't spend $5,000 for a piece of an actual art, I wouldn't. It's not art. It's like for me, it'd be, oh, just to join the community, $500. I just bought it for fun. That's it. But it's not like I would never buy it as an investment or something that I think can go up in price. Um, and that was a big thing. Everyone was making money. Everyone wanted in, right? Oh, we have this team and this utility, and the community is great, and you have access to these events. I got into like NBA games here, NBA games here. I shouldn't have said WM. That was terrible. Um, I got into like all sorts of really cool events because of a couple of NFTs that I owned, and that was cool. But would I have spent $6,000 to do that? No. Like, do the math. Rob just sold everything. I'm not trying to get you guys to sell everything. I don't make your own decisions, but I've learned to cut my losses. I'm sitting here, I'm like, great, sell to me. No, I'm kidding. It's so funny? You get people on the YouTube channel, they're like, they're trying to get the price to crash so they can buy it all. They literally say that. And it's like, I wish I had enough money to do that. Like, that'd be cool. Like, dude, we're a small channel compared to some of these other channels. I'm not kidding. And those guys, I already know, can't even touch the price of Bitcoin. Like, they couldn't touch it. And like, you just look at the correlation. If something's crashing, it's probably just because Bitcoin is. Like, we're nobodies. But it is funny when people do that. It's like everything's a conspiracy all the time. Let's see here. Rick, you're saying you don't understand enough to know how to convert your stuff to stable coins. Can I ask the quick question and just tell me in the chat, where is your crypto? Is it on a centralized exchange or in DeFi? Are you an accelerator student? And then if it's on a ledger, look up. I would really do this. It depends. Are you looking to hold for the next 10 years, 5 years? Right? I don't know enough, but I will say, if it's on a Coinbase wallet, maybe you can like, sell that portion just to kind of keep a bit of a hedge. And everything on your ledger, if you're thinking 5 to 10 years out, you want just keep buying and then dumping it into the ledger. I think from an investment standpoint, buy your biggest and your safest. But understand that you're going to watch the value of your portfolio go down in a bear market, right? But for me, like I'm still investing. I'm gonna dollar cost average into Bitcoin the entire way down. But that's separate from me making money, right? That's not my income generator. This is me thinking 10 years out. So it really depends on your goals and your life and but so like for some of you guys on this call, you're already like, I already sold everything. Great. Like if but Rob, like I don't want you to think that Rob needs to be you, right? And I'm not also your financial advisor here. I'm being honest and realistic. Some of you guys have different goals, and are thinking about this market differently. Me personally, I'd like to have more cash to buy more. So my entire swing portfolio is done. Like I'm out. And I have money in different like, DeFi stuff. It's out, like all of it. So that's kind of where my head's at. And then I'm going to use that to guess what? Dollar cost average buy dips, you name it. Um, Short sell, whatever. What about the theory that there's a limited supply of XRP? There's no limited supply right now, bro. There's going to be more and more supply. And the reality is it's going to enter the market. Currently, there's 60 billion circulating supply. There's another 40 billion. 40% of all the supply is not in the market yet, which means once it enters the market, it's overhead. Okay. What happens when supply enters the market? It can be sold into the market. So if a billion tokens enter the market at an average price of $2.16, do the math on that. Okay. That's a lot of money that people actually have to buy to just keep the price flat. Not make the price go up, to keep it flat. And do you think that's going to happen in a bear market? I know better. So there is if you want to talk about limited supply, every crypto has a limited supply according to that logic. Algorand. I don't even like Algorand. Let's look at it. 10 billion algo. That is a limited supply of 10 billion. 8.7 is currently circulating. So 87% of the supply, 88% is circulating, and it's not doing too hot. Here, we have 60 billion circulating of a total of 100, which means 60%. Okay? Limited supply. Let's look at Caspa. All of the supply is circulating. Guess what this thing is doing? That's a pretty good tokenomics, by the way. All-time high. That's market cap. 19 cents. Currently sitting at at 4 cents. Great tokenomics. Limited supply. This is like, and it's all circulating. So that's a limited, right? The question is who's buying it? Someone has to buy it for the price to go up for you to make money on a long. It's kind of like, bro, I have a limited supply of bread, but what if it's got mold in it? Does anyone want to buy it? I could have 10 loaves right here. Who's buying it? So I just want to like break that thinking. It doesn't matter if it's limited or not. Luis said, I'm going to go home and do the math, but just seeing if anyone knows offhand. I'm a little confused of, oh, you're asking up top. Is it worth it to move from an exchange like Coinbase to a decentralized wallet, then convert it from there? Honestly, it really depends, dude. Like for me, if I just need the ease of use, I almost always do exclusively market orders. Because I watch my positions, I'm okay paying a higher fee to be out to save myself way bigger losses or to enter at the exact right time and get my order filled where I want to enter. So I'm always willing to pay more in fees to protect my capital overall. But if you're like, I have the next, 10 hours, 5 hours, hour available, go for it. If it actually makes sense. Most of the time, even on DeFi stuff, you're going to pay fees that are decently high. It's pretty competitive. And as the space grows and it has Coinbase, I would recommend you get a Coinbase One account and you're going to pay way less in fees, or do your trading on Coinbase Pro versus your Coinbase Swap. The swap feature is the easiest way to pay way higher fees because it's very simple to use and normies use it, which means it's designed to make the company more fees. So maybe Coinbase Pro, the actual trading platform, is the smarter move. What about the theory that there's a limit? Okay, the next one. Yes, 10 years. Okay, then perfect. Rick, dude, do not sell your Bitcoin. Wait for another 60K or 50K, or I don't know where it's going. I don't think it'll go 50. I think if it did, that's a fire sale, by the way. Let's just say we are in a bear market, right? Buy every week. Every 2 weeks, just keep dumping money at it. That's my personal take. That's what I'm doing. I am so uncertain. So what do you think XRP 5 to 10 years? Imagine you asking me what the world's going to look like 5 to 10 years from now. I don't know. Here's what I do know. I'm almost confident of this. This is one thing I would bet on. There will be far more circulating supply. More of the supply is going to enter the market. And Ripple itself will make money by selling it. That's what I am confident of. In terms of how much or how great the demand is, I don't know. In terms of where the price is going to be, I don't know. If I had to bet 10 years out which crypto is going to do better percentage wise, so there's going to be a week or two where XRP rallies hard, I still would bet on Bitcoin 10 years from now. It's just safer. It doesn't mean it will do better. I would rather bet on safety 10 years out with confidence than which is how Warren Buffett has made it so long. You really have to think about that. How many investors were amazing, making crazier returns than him throughout his like I don't know how many decades now, right? 70 decades or 7 decades of 70 years, 7 decades of in being in the markets consistently. How many have gone to insane heights only to crash and burn? Whereas he's always just chosen consistency. And that in and of itself compounds. That's why he's so good at what he does. He's patient. So for me, I'd rather choose that. That's a lot of questions, Rick. It's hard to answer all of them right now. If you're swapping on Ledger to USDC, does it matter what network to use? I think that's a question. All these questions, by the way, guys, if you have them, ask them inside of Altcoin Pro, right? And one of our pros and experts will get back to you on that. I think that's wise. Because we probably don't have the time to be answering all these little technical questions. Talk more just markets. So, okay, I think we're good to go. No final questions. Already 5:20. I gotta get rolling. Any final questions about the market? I think we're good. Thanks so much for your time, guys. I appreciate it. Just keep sticking with it. Listen, I hope that this call is worth more than the value of anything you've ever paid to be here. And if every week you were on, you learn something that's going to help you to improve yourself in the markets and you're serious about it, great. Like, I wish I had this when I was starting out. And so, especially for you, someone, that's new orange, like, good on you, man. Stick with it, and you can make a lot of money in markets. I appreciate you guys, and I will see you next week, okay? Play it safe.